Hi, this is Leslie. I'm very happy to share with you this episode about our cities, how they will adapt and reemerge from ongoing challenges, the pandemic, as well as climate change. There is no better way to celebrate International Women's Day than recording a new Energy Vista episode with a brilliant voice on urban creativity and innovation, Cecile Maisonneuve, who is also a deep thinker on what city transformation means for an energy system, electrification, and mobility. This is also the 40th episode of the Energy Vista podcast that I launched 2 years ago, and I'm proud to have inspired you and given a voice to energy experts, including 21 outstanding women that share their knowledge on complex issues and inspire others. Have a great listening. Welcome to Energy Vista, a podcast on energy issues, personal and professional trajectories. I'm your host, Leslie Palti-Guzman. In each episode of this podcast, we chat with energy experts from all around the world. We exchange on timely energy issues as well on their life experience. You will learn a lot, whether you're an energy aficionado or a newbie. And one of my favorite parts of the podcast is a segment on personal trajectories where I always learn a lot. I find it authentic and inspiring. It's February 26, 2021, and time for a new Energy Vista episode. Today I'm exchanging with Cecile Maisonneuve, who is the chairman or chairwoman, actually, of the think tank La Fabrique de la Cite, which is dedicated to urban foresight innovations, and it was created 11 years ago by the Vinci Group. Hi, Cecile.
Hi, Leslie.
Thank you very much for joining the podcast. To start, I would like you to explain us what is La Fabrique de la Cite. I like the name a lot. It suggests a city from the Greek, like the old city in the making. Tell us a little bit about the name and what's the mission.
Yes, Leslie, so I'm very happy to be here with you today from Paris, actually, and La Fabrique de la Cité is a French name, and you're right, because we chose not to translate it, because I think that even in English and in many languages, it rings some bells. La Fabrique de la Cité is a think tank, and as you said, we are dedicated to understanding what's going on in terms of urban innovation, urban perspective, all around the world, and how our cities are transforming themselves. What are the weak signals? What are the big trends which are at stake? And also, I wouldn't speak about sharing best practices or putting forward best practices from a city to others, but rather putting forward inspiring examples. I don't speak about best practices because our cities are so different, and it's what makes also the interest of working on cities, that it wouldn't be so relevant to speak about best practices, but inspiring is an engine for city creativity and progress around the world in our urban world.
Very interesting. So we both live in large cities. You live in Paris. I live in New York. And right now, in some ways, both cities have been devastated by the COVID-19 health and economic crisis. Young population working population are fleeing the city. There is remote work, which means there are many empty commercial buildings and business areas, business districts, which are empty. Underused public transportation, vacant stores, many ongoing transformation. Some people say, some trends will remain, some will not. But it seems that we're at a crossroad, and maybe it's a silver lining to rethink how cities will reemerge from this epidemic, and maybe rebuild better. What do you recommend policymakers right now when they rethink about the transformation of their cities?
Yes, so city, you're pointing, Leslie, the right issue. Our cities, and especially large metropolises, which were vibrating, extremely active, like New York, Paris, London, or elsewhere, they are not themselves anymore. and we feel it, we suffer from it. I don't know how you feel living in New York currently, but Paris really is not Paris anymore without the cafe, without the restaurants, without the tourists. Paris is a very important touristic destination in the world. So you're right that they are suffering a lot. I would say that there is absolutely no silver bullet when it comes to how to revitalize our cities. But there is one but. I think the first and most important message for people will be to say and repeat that density is not responsible for the pandemic and for the COVID, because we read a lot that density is on trial. Density is the problem when it comes to the expansion of the disease. And actually, it's not true. Look at Asian cities like Singapore, like Hong Kong. You don't absolutely find the numbers don't say that. And the truth is that even in France, the first cluster were in a mid-sized city, and it was because there had been a religious gathering. So the notion of cluster has nothing to do with the density of the city. And if I speak, for example, about the number of people victims of the disease in France, the numbers are much higher in Seine-Saint-Denis, which is close to Paris, but where the density is 3 times less than Paris. So really, it has to be a strong message that density is not a problem. Why do I insist on that? Because you talked about rebuilding our cities. And we know that our cities have to adapt, have to transform, have to be part of the fight against climate change. And we have to be very clear on this. It's not compatible to, on the one hand, be willing to fight against climate change, on the other hand, to say that density is a problem. Because the dense city is a city where you can reduce your energy consumption, where you can reduce the consumption of space, and it has a lot to do with biodiversity, which is also at stake when it comes to climate change. So really, this is a very important message to be said and repeated by politicians and by people in charge in our cities. That being said, I think one of the big lesson we have to draw from what we're currently undergoing is everything which has to do with the role of public space in the city. Public space is not what remains when you have built your city, what is between the buildings, what is beside the road. Public space has a value per se. So you spoke earlier about the Greek city. We know that public space was the place where democracy was happening, when people gathered and debated and so on. But today, public space has many roles to play in our cities. Still, I think the role of democracy or undemocratic movement, as we recently saw in Washington, D.C., but it's also a place where people meet, where people gather. And actually, when we have a pandemic, we see that it's a place where we have to be very vigilant about meeting the others. So, truly speaking, this question of how we will reshape our public space, how we will work on the continuity between where we live, the inside the buildings and outside the building, how we can, would say, expand the surface which we need to be to practice our activities, and how we can organize, I would say, a dialogue between public space and private space where we live is a very important one, especially in very dense and large metropolises as the ones where we're living.
Mm-hmm. So you mentioned climate change, which is definitely a very important way maybe to reshape the cities, rethink the cities, and attract again citizens. So how do you think about the transformation of mobility in the cities? Are we heading towards a city that is greener, using less intense carbon industries, fuels, infrastructure, more pedestrian, more bicycles? Tell us a little bit how you envision the future of those cities.
Yeah, it's true that mobility is really the point when it comes to make cities more suitable for well-being and for the adaptation or the fight against climate change. You mentioned earlier the huge crisis which our public transportation is going through. And this is a problem. This is definitely a problem because we have built, especially in our large, dense metropolises, we have built mobility systems in which public transportation are the backbone. So for the moment, this backbone is broken. So we have absolutely to repair it. And why? Because we all know that to decarbonize our economies, we have first to decarbonize our energy mix and then to expand the use of electricity when we have clean electricity. And it's a well-known fact that most of our public transportation work with electricity. So it's absolutely it's absolutely key that we find a way, and actually there are now many ways. We have to put money in the public transportation system, which in many cities are currently dying. Yeah. So this is a very important point. Second point, there is this debate, and I mentioned it earlier when I spoke about public space, about which share you leave for what we call active mobilities. Walking, biking, I don't know if you'd say that in English, scootering, or
yeah, we can say that.
And the car system, and this is especially true, I would say, in US cities where the car has shaped not only the suburbs but also very often the downtown and the heart of the city, which is less true in Europe, where at the heart of the cities you already have a stronger share of active mobilities and public transportation. So this debate is currently very hot in many cities, and we see many cities developing the use of bike and so on. So this is, I think, a trend which will continue, but we have to keep in mind that in all the cities all around the world, we need to better connect the suburbs and the center of the city. And for this, bike won't be enough. And the question there is how you organize a truly multimodal system. I mean, there will be less and less space for cars in downtown. This is true everywhere. Some cities are already very advanced in this. Just take the example of Oslo, for example, in Norway. So there will be less and less space. You have to organize a system where the people living quite far away from downtown, but who need to go to downtown for their job or, I don't know, for leisure, for those people to be able to access. And the notion of how you access this kind of right to the city and its amenities and its opportunities is absolutely key. And to organize this system, I was saying that it's really the moment we have to seriously work on intermodality and multimodality. Multimodality is using many, a car and then public transportation and then a scooter. Intermodality is how you organize the interfaces between those different systems. And up to now, we had a very siloed approach. There was a car system, roads, tolls, and so on. There was a public transportation system. And now we have to make the system work together and really kind of engage a dialogue and, I would say, a holistic approach of this system so that you can decarbonize it. For the moment, we don't have the right tools and the right, I would say, approach to do that.
Yeah. One of the key starting point of the Yellow Vest movement was actually the high price of energy and how some people who live in the suburb may have paid higher for their gasoline, for their cars. And that would have, in terms of equity and, access to energy, how do you see that impacting also the transformation of the cities, like making this new mobility accessible to all?
You're absolutely right, Leslie. And this question, the articulation between mobility, sustainability, and inequality is absolutely key. And this is one of the research topics we will work on this year. Uh, there was a yellow vest movement in France, but you may have seen there was also a movement in Santiago de Chile because the price for public transportation tickets was raised. So this is a question everywhere. This question about, I would say, embedding all the people in this transformation of the mobility system. And there we have to be very clear, and especially policymaker has to be very clear on what is the vision, what is the project. The truth is, if I take the example of France, the truth is that during the last decades, 4 or 5 last decades, we have said to French people, okay, go in the suburbs. We had a lot of urban sprawl. Buy yourself a house with a garden, and you can have 2 cars, and it will be. We have a very good road system. So this is perfect. This is a good way of life. And suddenly we tell those people we need to commute during 1 hour. We need to make, I don't know, 30 or 40 kilometers to get to their job, with both adults in the couple working and children at school and with sport activities. So you see the picture of how you organize your day when you have this kind of way of life. And suddenly we tell these people, okay, this is not the right thing you did. You have to pay for this way of life. This is properly impossible to bring the topic of sustainability like that. So I think what is the key lesson we have to take from this crisis, from this social crisis, is that when you work on transforming mobility systems, you have to really understand the features of the territory you're working on. When you work on New York and its suburbs, people have a certain way of commuting from one place to another. There are social characteristics, cultural characteristics. You have to work in a certain way, but you can't work the same way when you're, for example, in the city of Toulouse in the south of France, where you have a lot of air and space industry, and where the urban sprawl is absolutely gigantic. So it's really, I would say, time to have a very humble and field approach, and not to apply, very interesting theoretical approaches on paper, but which doesn't work when you want to apply in real life. So it's time for working also. I would say the fourth term of the equation of mobility, sustainability, and inequality is acceptability or public acceptance.
Yeah.
And this is high time we also work on this.
Yeah, good. We mentioned several times electrification. Do you see, all carbon fuels out of the city in the next few years, or what about, we increasingly rely also on Amazon deliveries and other kind of deliveries. The future is for heavy duty trucks to run also on hydrogen, maybe some natural gas or electrification. Or do we, leapfrog to drones and other kinds of futuristic way of transporting goods?
You are absolutely right, Leslie, to point out that mobility is also mobility of goods and not only of people, even if it's less fashionable to talk about that. But the fact is, one of the biggest trends accelerated by this crisis is this one about e-commerce, about the new way of consuming. And actually, this is good news from a territorial point of view. I mean, the people who are not living in large metropolises can access the same level of services wherever they live. So it's from that point of view, it's very good news for I would say quality of life of people and their aspiration to culture and so on. So that being said, you're right that we can't have I would say only one technological approach when it comes to mobility. electrification for sure. And from that point of view, I draw your attention, for example, in Europe, you have a kind of, I would say, a sandwich phenomenon, which brings to ban out, I would say, fuel-based mobility for individual cars. You have the European regulation, you have more and more national regulation, and more you have cities who say, okay, as of 2030, 2035, or even 2025, I don't want any more diesel car in my city center. And then I don't want any more thermal car.
Yeah.
And as we said previously, you also have more and more cities say, I don't want cars anymore, which is, in my view, not very relevant. But for trucks and for the delivery and so on, it's true that hydrogen is an extremely serious option. And actually, this is also the political message delivered in many countries of the EU and in the EU by the European Union itself, with billions of euros being poured in this form of energy. But it's not for tomorrow, let's be honest. For those who say that we will have trucks with hydrogen in 2027, I think it's really, really optimistic. And we have to work a lot on technology. We have to work a lot on the infrastructure. We have to reduce the cost. And which hydrogen are we talking about?
Yeah.
Green, blue, gray. So this is a big issue. But for sure, when such a country as Germany is pushing hard for it, we have to take the question very, very seriously.
Yeah.
So there will be, I would say, a mix of solutions for sure. So once again, no silver bullet, no single solution. We shouldn't forget that we are in a process of transition. Yeah. And that this technological aspect of transforming mobilities is only one side. The other aspect is working also on urban planning. Do we have to move so many people the same way we did? And there is also, but I don't buy so much this vision of things, the idea that, white collars will stay at home working and goods will come to them. So you just displace the problem. You don't solve the problem. You say, okay, people won't move anymore except to go during the weekend in a fantastic place like Marrakesh in Morocco when we're in Paris. But during the week, they will feel themselves very, very, virtuous because they don't use their car, but they will need a lot of services and goods coming to them. And there we come back to the point we were talking earlier.
Yeah.
So complex solutions, transition, but also a need for a vision and to be also very, very, very clear on this mix of technologies we need.
Yeah. You mentioned, the transportation of goods and thinking about it, ahead. What do you think of the use of waterways, like internal waterways, like La Seine or the Hudson River here in New York? Do you think there will be more use of those waterways and less highways, like road highways?
Let's say that they have been underused, but I don't think this will be a big part of solution. I believe much more on, let's say, the transformation of the road network being used as a kind of railroad network. And from that point of view, you could have with mixing the technology of autonomous vehicle plus hydrogen, kind of trucks moving on road like trains. So these are, in my view, more effective and more at the right scale solutions when it comes to move the goods we need to move in a society where people are always more and more demanding for goods, services, and so on. So this is, and there you have very interesting reflection on the electric road as well. So many technology to make the road reload the vehicles and so on. So um, um, the use of water, or you were speaking earlier about drones, yes, but in some specific areas, so it's not an everywhere scalable solution. And once again, let's remain very open.
Yeah.
And let's see which part of the territory we are talking about. In territories where you have a very low density of population, drones, why not? Mm-hmm. But in New York or Paris, I don't think it
might become dangerous. Yeah. In Texas, like a few days ago in the US, we saw massive power outage and people with their life completely disrupted, no clean water, no heat at a time where temperatures were freezing, couldn't use the roads. How do you think our cities need to get ready for more extreme weather events, flooding or heat waves, polar vortex, whatever is the, extraordinary weather events that we may face in the future because of climate change?
Well, I think the example of Texas is extremely interesting, and we have really everywhere in the world to study what happened there. So I see that there are really Texan issues at stake there, but there are also more universal lessons to be drawn from what happened there. And the first one being that we are talking about decarbonizing our energy mix and so on. But let's not forget that it doesn't replace the obsession we must have for energy security. Mm-hmm. And our cities, our lives, we just can't function without energy. So we shouldn't make our systems more fragile at a time when they have to be stronger. Because, as you said, because of the likelihood of more extreme climate events, which will take different forms, floodings, freezing, well, we don't know, or excessive heat, we have to make them stronger. And all the question behind is the term of resilience. So this term is a very rich one and difficult to define, but let's say that it implies both a very technical and engineering approach. We have to technically invest in our major vital infrastructure to make them more robust in front of those events. And this means huge billions of investment in our networks, because cities are networks also. Yeah. But resilience is also about, I would say, more organizational aspects. The idea that cities have to be self-reliant more and more, they were in the past, they were in the Middle Ages, and frankly speaking, this was not bringing security. So what is at stake, I think, is to better work on the interdependencies between cities, between the cities and the surrounding territories, and to better reflect how those links can be reinforced, instead of thinking that we're going to have a lot of little systems which will be self-reliant. Yeah. Self-reliance in this context, I think, means more fragility. And to me, the big lesson from what we are currently going through, the lockdown and so on, is that it's the first time in the history of mankind that we can live rather well in such situations, because we have those interdependencies. If I can stay in my apartment during the months of lockdown, it's because we had water, we had electricity, we even had everything we could order. So this is really the first time it happens. So we can work from home. So we have to keep our systems more robust, but also to work on how we strengthen those interdependencies to make them more resilient.
Mm-hmm. I agree. Interesting. So, Cecile, let's move to your personal trajectory. When I'm looking at your past experiences and the current experience right now at La Fabrique de la Cite, they have in common your civic involvement, your civic duty in a way, civic activism. Can you tell us a little bit what you think contributed to make this choice in your professional trajectory and shaped you? And I have to mention you went to the best schools in France, Sciences Po, Normal Sup. So I guess you studied hard, and you have also a multi-disciplinary understanding of the world.
Well, when I listen to you, I'm wondering, am I an idealist? No, truly. I think what interests me, and this is why I used to work in the energy sector, and now I work on city issues. What is the most interesting point for me is to work on complexity. This can sound crazy, complexity. People hate when it's complex. They want things to be simple. But I studied a lot of history, and my takeaway from the studies I did when I was younger is that we have this fantastic creativity because we have this fantastic capacity of forgetting the past. Mm-hmm. And this is also what makes us progressing. But at the same time, we have a fantastic capacity of reproducing the same mistakes. And frankly speaking, it's because we always want to apply simple solutions to complex situations. And when you work on cities, you work on a technical system. When I said earlier that a city is a system of networks, which is true, but we work on a highly human thing as well. And what is very interesting to me is to create the dialogue between people who are working on the same object, but truly don't speak the same language. When an engineer is working on the electricity network of a city, when a politician is trying to make the city bring more well-being to the citizens, when a company is trying to find the best place to build its headquarters, they all work on the same object, but they don't have the same way of seeing the world. And what I like to do is to bring those people around the same table and to establish a dialogue so that everyone can work in its best interest, can make the best of what it does, and at the same time that it produces the optimum situation. I don't know if I'm very clear, but you mentioned where I studied, but what is very important to me is the notion of common good, public good, general interest. There are many things to say the same thing, and it's something which is valuable. It's something we have built in the 18th century, notion of common good, and I think we can, for example, in our cities can, I would say, embody this common good or not. Mm-hmm. And it's very interesting to see how you can make it happen. So I guess this is my engine, and I guess what I also like to mention it is this multidisciplinarity you have to bring around the table when working on such topics.
Yeah. So I saw actually that I think a while ago now, but you wrote about Benjamin Franklin. And he was a polymath, right? He was so many things at the same time in his life: a diplomat, a postmaster, a writer, an inventor, and it's definitely skills that you need now to think about the cities. Like, what do you think he would? What kind of wisdom can he bring to us today?
Well, you're right. Benjamin Franklin is a fascinating character, and I was very happy to see that President Biden put a portrait of Benjamin Franklin in the Oval Office at the White House. Well, I think what is very interesting with Ben Franklin is that, what I like the most in this character is the fact that he wasn't born to be what he became. He wasn't, as opposed to all the other founding fathers of the United States of America. He was born in a very poor family. He had no education, and he really built its destiny with his own hands. And I think I like the idea that nothing is written yet. Mm-hmm. And when I hear, for example, people, when we talk about climate change, saying, oh, God, it's terrible, the most terrible things are going to happen. Well, we have, yes, a very, very difficult thing to manage. But really, I do believe in the fantastic capacity of the human mind to create, to invent, to work together. And I think Ben Franklin is quite representative of this way of seeing things. You know, nothing's written. You write history yourself. You know, there is no fate, I think.
Yeah.
And this is something I would say very energizing to think that you have your future in your hands. Question is to work with many hands in the same direction.
Yeah, fantastic. I like this message of no fatalism. And Cecile, thank you so much for making a difference in our societies. And you do it in a very smart way and thoughtful way. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
This concludes our Energy Vista podcast, which was recorded on February 26, 2021. This is Leslie Palti-Guzman saying good day and good luck.